Hey guys, welcome to this video. In this video we're gonna be doing something really cool. We're gonna be doing cloth simulation inside Unreal Engine 5. I'm gonna do the setup in Maya, but you can follow along with any software. So if we take a look at this clip, I think it's pretty obvious that the cloth is not being simulated. As you can see, it just has an animation and it doesn't look good. So we're gonna give it some simulation inside Unreal Engine. So the first thing that we have to do is let's open Maya, have your character here with the rig. Let's click at Python. Now open the script editor, file open. And I made this little plugin, I'll link it in the description, it's free to download. We're gonna load it. Just Ctrl A and drag it into your shelf. Let's call this icon cloth. Let's save. Save preferences. Now we can open it. And we have a little plugin for the cloth simulation that we're gonna be preparing. So the way you do cloth simulation in Unreal Engine 4 is you wanna select your part that you want to be simulated. So let's say this part, and you want to give this a different material, like cloth material 01. And the plugin is gonna automate this, but if you're doing this tutorial on Blender, 3ds Max or whatever, instead of using the plugin you gotta do the materials by hand. So let's actually get started. The first thing is we hit the make materials. Now if we open the material editor, you can see that we have a bunch of materials. Again, if you're doing this tutorial in another software, just make a cloth material 01 and a proxy material 01. The colors don't matter, the name doesn't matter, as long as it's clear what it is. If you're gonna be simulating multiple parts, you're gonna need more materials. So cloth material 2, 3, however many you wanna simulate. Then we just select some cloth, what we want to simulate. So let's select this piece. Then we apply cloth 01. And that's good. Now everything that is blue, that has the cloth material 1, is gonna be its own cloth simulation. But we have more cloth simulations to do. So let's select these two and apply cloth 02. Now these ones are gonna have their own cloth simulation. And lastly, we have two parts right here. And select. Let's get to selecting it. So select everything that you wanna have simulated and apply a cloth material. Gonna do the same here. Now we have 4 cloth materials that are all gonna have a simulation. So that's looking good. Now that we have all the cloth parts selected, we're gonna do the proxy mesh. And it sounds a little bit complicated, the proxy mesh, but all it is just for your low poly you make a new mesh. This is the mesh that we're actually gonna simulate in Unreal Engine. So let's start with our first proxy mesh for this part. So I'm gonna hide it. Let's create a cylinder. Now I'm just gonna model our proxy mesh. You don't wanna spend too much time doing this, because you'll probably be going back and forward and changing your proxy mesh all the time. So I'm just gonna do a quick one. So you want to try to match it as close as you can to your low poly. So basically you're making a low poly for your low poly. It's the same idea. You want everything to match as closely as possible as when you're doing the high to low poly. So I think that's looking okay. It's not perfect, but as for the video, I'm just gonna do it quickly. And the most important part of your proxy mesh is that the squares, your quads, are evenly spaced. Like this is bad. You don't want to have squashed quads. You want to have them as squared as possible. So let's do this. You also want to have them grid-like. The more grid-like, the better the simulation. You don't want to have them really messy like this and this. You want to have them nicely gridded. And what's really important is that you have the first edge match really closely. So for this one I'm gonna move it closer to the edge. And the more poly count you put on your proxy mesh, the more performance the simulation is gonna be. So you wanna keep this low, but not too low that you're gonna have a chunky simulation. Because the more polys you add, the more smooth your simulation will be. Now as final step, we wanna have an extra loop here. So let's take a look at this. That's matching nicely. So now I'm gonna hit apply proxy 01. It's gonna give the mesh a name, proxy mesh 01. And it's gonna apply a new material. Let's delete the history on this. Proxy material 01. That's all we have to do for our first proxy mesh. So let's make the other proxy meshes. Let's start with the proxy mesh 02. So what we can do is we can do an export of this character and we can import it. Now we have a duplicate. Now let's just select these and these. Now we can delete the rest of them. So let's select the parts that we need. Another invert and delete. Now we can use these as proxy meshes. But first let's do a mesh separate. So they're all separated. Because these have the same cloth simulation material, they need to be merged together. So let's go to mesh, combine. Edit, delete by type, history. Let's get rid of the triangles here. Now we can keep them like this, or we can subdivide them to have a little bit more resolution. So let's go to here and let's click smooth. Now the simulation will just have a little bit more resolution. It's a little bit hard to see right now, so I'm gonna click this one. It's gonna get rid of all the materials for now. It's just a preview. So let's do the same. Let's get rid of all the triangles. Do the same for the other part. Let's smooth. And again, let's do a smooth. And actually, that's not the best proxy mesh, as they're not evenly squared. But for the sake of the video, I'm not gonna make them better. But if you're doing it for a project, just connect them and make sure they have a evenly gridded. So let's get our colors back. Let's get them out of the group. And this one's gonna be the proxy 2. You wanna make sure that you match the cloth material. And a way to make sure it's the same with the plugin, it's gonna have the same color. If I give this proxy 3, you will see that the colors don't match. That means that it isn't the right one. So proxy 2. And it's also gonna change the name. For this one's proxy 3. And as you can see, the colors are matching, and that way we know for sure that's the right one. Then the last one, proxy 4. And you see all the colors are matching, so we know we did it right. So one thing I forgot to mention, let's take all our proxy meshes. You want to make sure that your proxy meshes, they are all single-sided. You do not want to have thickness to them, like some thickness, it's gonna break the simulation. Don't do it. I also forgot to add an extra edge to all of them. So let's do that. And I will explain in Unreal Engine why we're adding an extra edge. So now our proxy meshes are fine. One thing that we need to do is, because it has animation, and the proxy meshes need to move with the animations. So let's just take this group, let's call it proxy meshes. Let's put this one on top. So now the final step to get the cloth simulation working is to bind the proxy meshes to the skeleton. So if we move this, you can see that the proxy meshes are not rigged. So let's select our rig, then our proxy meshes, go to skin, and you want to make sure that you put it on closest in hierarchy, because proxy meshes that are too far from the joints otherwise are not gonna be having any skinning. So let's hit apply, and now they're skinned. But one problem now is that if we move it, you can see that the proxy meshes are skinned differently from a character. So to fix that, let's select vampire, this is our character with the good skinning. Then we select proxy mesh 01. Let's go to skin, and let's see, copy skin weights. Make sure to put the settings like this, apply. Let's do this for all the proxy meshes. First select the first one and then the proxy mesh, this is important. Otherwise it will copy the wrong skinning. So now that we did all that, let's move our joint. Now you can see that the proxy mesh is being skinned the same as our original character. So that's all we have to do in Maya. So let's select everything. Let's export it. Vampire final. So in Unreal Engine, now all that you have to do is re-import the mesh. And then it will show up with our proxy meshes. And as you see, it lost some materials, and that's because we changed the material to the cloth materials. So let's open up the mesh. And here you can see the material slots. So in all the cloth materials, we want to reapply the material. Now you can see we have a material back. In the proxy mesh, we're gonna leave it empty. So let's start the cloth simulations. First we go to window, and you wanna make sure that you select clothing. that it's selected. Then let's go to a proxy mesh 01. Let's hit isolate. Now let's do section selection. Let's enable that. Now we can select our proxy mesh. Now we right click, create clothing data from section. Let's remove the, now let's keep it. But you want to make sure that you hit the remove from mesh. And the asset name, vampire final clothing 01. Let's create it. And now you can see it hided the proxy mesh. So now let's go to a proxy material, isolate as the proxy mesh. Let's go to clothing, click this one, and activate cloth paint. Now let's go down to settings. Let's change the brush radius to something like 6. A bit bigger, 12. And everything that's pink, it's not gonna be simulated. And here's our paint value. Everything that's white is gonna be simulated. So let's start by painting the bottom section. And let's change your tool to smooth. Now we're gonna smooth this out. And we added the extra edge because you do not wanna have this be any other color than purple. You wanna have no simulation at the beginning. So that's looking fine. So once that's done, we go back to asset details. Let's not hit isolate, deactivate cloth paint. The asset details. Let's go to clothing. Asset details, I mean. And then in clothing. Properties, hold on. Ah, yeah. In LOD 0. Let's go to sections. And then we have a sections of a character. So section 5, blah blah. So let's look for cloth material 1. Cloth material 1. So let's go to clothing and let's apply a cloth data. And now you can see that's looking really weird. Hold on, let me figure out why. Alright, it got a texture back. Let me just try to close this and open it up again. And I'm not sure why it's blowing up that much. Let's preview animation. I'll run animation. You can see that we have some cloth simulation, but it's looking a bit weird. Actually, let's go to clothing, select the first one and a physic asset. Let's clear that one. Now you can see we have a much more normal cloth simulation, but we're not having any interaction at all. So to fix that, let's use our physics asset. This is just gonna give collision to the simulation. But the physics asset is wrong. So let's fix that. So just double click it. And as you can see, like we have some volumes here and they're supposed to represent the body. But Unreal always messes these up and you gotta fix them by hand. And it's a little bit difficult to see. One thing that I like to do is go to lit and put it to unlit, and this will just make it a little bit more easy to see. Now all that we have to do is scale the things down. Let's scale it down, let's rotate it. You want to try to match the body as best as you can. So for now, one thing that we can do is we can go back to Vampire Vinyl Asset Details. And let's go to the cloth material, as we don't need that for now. We can go to section. Hold on. We can go to sections. Let's look for the cloth materials. Vampire, matte, proxy, cloth material. Let's disable. Let's do this for all the cloth materials. Let's also do this for all the proxy materials. So now we have everything disabled except for the parts that are not cloth. And these are gonna have the collision. So now if we go back to a physics asset, you can see that will be a little bit easier to work with, because we can actually see what we're doing. So let's take this one, left up leg, and we need to scale that way down. Rotate it, put it in place. I like to disable these, as these are the snapping. You will just have a little bit more control without them. And while you're doing the cloth simulation, you're constantly gonna be going back to the physics assets and changing stuff around until you get something that works. So just try to match your character as good as you can. Gonna leave this pointing out a bit so we have some collision for the swords here. So the last part. Move this one a little bit more. As you can see, now we have something that represents the character a lot better. I'm not gonna worry too much about these parts, as we don't have any cloth simulation going on there, so it doesn't matter for now, for the purpose of this demonstration. It's okay, it's looking a lot better. Now we can go to preview animation and we can do a run animation. And we can see our physics asset, our collisions with the animation. So if you're working with a lot of animations, you want to preview them on multiple animations, same for the cloth. So let's save that. Now once we go here, let's enable the first clothing part back. Final clothing 01. Enable. Now you can see we have our clothing back. And it's not being blown up really bad. And we have some collision going on. As you can see, it still doesn't look good, so we still need to mess more with it. So let's close this one, Let's just open it again. Let's see it like this. You can see we have some problems with clipping. So to fix that, let's go back to our physics asset. Let's just scale this one up. Same for this one. Still clipping a bit. Still clipping. You're gonna be tweaking these settings all the time. So let's save. Let's exit out. Exit this window out again. Let's open it again. And now you can see the clipping here is gone. It's not going through the legs. So we have a little bit of clipping here. So once again, open up the physics asset. Let's fix the clipping over there. So like that. Same for this part. Save. And you wanna close the windows. I don't know why, but if you don't close them, they don't update. Well, a lot of the times. So now you can see that we have no clipping at the moment. But that's without the animation. So let's try the animation. And it's looking a lot better now. It's not clipping too much, but we're gonna need to edit some of the settings. So let's go to the settings. Let's pause the animation. Actually, let's just reopen it. And now we go to clothing, and we can hit clothing 1 and go to cloth config. Now we have a lot of settings that we can mess with, like density. Let's put a bit higher. This is gonna make it a little bit heavier. So if we put it at 1, you can kinda see a difference. But what I usually do is I just mess with the settings until I get something that I like. As I don't make actual games, I just use this to render for my portfolio. The settings don't matter too much, as long as it just looks nice. And the easiest setting to mess with for the big difference is the gravity scale. So you can see if we put this really high, it's gonna be really heavy. So let's put this at 3 for now. Let's go to animation. Let's preview it. Let's try something like 10. I think now it's a little bit too heavy, so let's do 7. Now we're getting something pretty nice. Let's change this to 0. Let's see how that looks. Now we just have something really weird. That's 0.1. Hmm, 0.5. But there are a lot of settings that you can mess with. I don't exactly know what everything does, but you can read up in the documentary online. But I didn't get the chance yet to. So I think for now that's looking pretty nice. Let's change the gravity a little bit less to something like 2. Change the density again. Actually, let's keep that 1. So I don't completely like how it looks, but to get something that you like, you're just gonna need to mess with all these settings. But for now, I'm just gonna move on to the next parts. So now that we did the physics asset, we don't need to worry about that. Let's close it again, open it again. Let's go to sections. The proxy materials we can keep, and let's enable them for now. Let's enable everything again. And this one, let's disable it again, as we don't need it. LOD section for proxy material 1, disable, as we already did the cloth simulation for that one. Let's move to the second cloth simulation. We could have also put it on the same one, as it's pretty far apart from each other, but just to mess with the settings differently, it's easier to do it like this. So section selections on, let's look for proxy material 02. Isolate. Highlight. And I think it's still disabled. Hold on. Proxy material 04, proxy material 01, proxy material. It's not double faced. Let's right click, create clothing from create clothing data from section and remove from mesh. So now here proxy material 02, let's isolate, activate cloth paint. And let's paint the cloth again. And that's the wrong mesh. Let's delete it. Delete. Asset details. Deactivate. No isolation. Proxy material 02. Proxy material 02, enable. Let's go to 02. Isolate. We can also go to character mesh. I forgot where it is, but you can turn on the wireframe if you want to check. Let's do a create clothing data. Clothing 02. Remove from mesh, create. Proxy material 02, isolate, activate cloth paint. 02. And actually it's the right mesh. I forgot to smooth it inside Maya. But I'm not gonna go back and change it. This is just for the video. So let's paint some simulation. Radius 2. Let's paint this white. Make sure that you keep this unsimulated. That's all. Deactivate cloth paint. Go back to asset details. Isolate off. Now let's go to LODs. LOD 0. Cloth material 2. Let's apply it. Clothing data. Now you can see we have some simulation. Now we just need to do the last two ones. So let's start with 03. Proxy material 03. Right here, isolate. Right click, create clothing data. Clothing _3. Remove from mesh. Create. Go to proxy material 03. Isolate, activate cloth paint, and let's select 03. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger. Let's do something like 4. Let's paint. Let's change to smooth. Let's smooth our mesh out here. Make sure that you keep this purple. Deactivate. Asset details, isolate, and let's also do 04 right away. Isolate, create clothing data, remove, _04, create, isolate again. Let's select it. I just like the other one. Brush. Let's paint our white. Again, everything that's white, it's gonna be simulated. And let's go to smooth. Let's smooth it out again. Like the white is gonna be fully simulated, and the more black, the less simulation it will have. So this is just gonna make sure that it's gonna look a little bit more natural, instead of having it white to purple. So let's save. Let's deactivate the cloth paint. Isolate turned off. And now let's apply all our clothing data. Proxy material 03. It's gonna have the clothing data 03. That's gonna have none. It's the clothing material. Cloth material. Clothing 03. Cloth material 04. Now as you can see, all the cloth on the character is simulated. Now if we go to preview, we go to run. Now you can see that we have simulated cloth. And again, if you don't like how it's looking, you can always go to the clothing. You can go to each one individually. And you can start altering the settings. So let's say crafty 2. That's just gonna change that one. And mess with it until you get something that you like. And yeah, that was it. This is how you do cloth simulation in Unreal Engine 5. This is just a really fast and quick way of showing you how to. There's a lot more that goes into it, like you're gonna have to tweak the proxy mesh, you're gonna tweak all the settings, but this is how you get some basic cloth running. All the characters and the animations in this video are from Mixamo. If you don't know it, you can download characters or rig your characters really easily there and have a lot of free animations. That's all. See you next time.